Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing beneath the walls of Whitehall Palace before dawn, where the Thames breathes mist against the stairs, and every stone seems to hold the night's cold. Damp straw clings to your boots. Smoke hangs in the rafters of a guard room. Monastery bells mark an hour that feels far too early for any sensible soul to be awake. Torchlight trembles across oak doors, horse breath clouds the winter air, and a cartwheel complains with the dignity of a courtier denied breakfast. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here, especially once you discover that warmth, privacy, and dry socks are treated as luxuries. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You may leave a comment telling us where you are listening from and what the local time is there. It is comforting to imagine distant rooms growing quiet together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass beneath the gate after a sleepy porter studies your face as if treason might be hidden behind your left ear. An iron key turns inside a lock broad enough to anchor a fishing boat, and the oak door closes behind you. Beyond it, the palace does not sleep, so much as wait. Corridors stretch through darkness, their floors softened by old rushes scattered with lavender and rosemary. The herbs disguise the smell of wet wool, soot, dog hair, and spilled ale with only partial success. A groom carrying a hooded lantern leads you inward. He walks carefully, because wax is costly, though these are beeswax candles for royal rooms rather than smoky tallow dips. Every door holds a shadow. Every stair has a servant sitting near it wrapped in a coarse cloak, trying not to sleep and failing with considerable devotion. Before sunrise, the Queen's household moves by sound more than sight. A chapel bell marks the hour. A page whispers a message. A kitchen boy hurries past with kindling bundled against his chest. Two women carry folded linen through a gallery where painted ancestors stare down with the patient disapproval of people who never had to rise before dawn. You follow, hearing soft shoes, faint coughing, and timber shrinking in the cold. The Queen remains behind locked doors. That fact shapes the palace. No one enters her private chamber without permission, and permission travels through layers of rank keys, whispered names, and careful memory. The outer rooms fill first. Ladies arrive in fur-lined cloaks. Gentlewomen warm their hands above a brazier. A yeoman checks shutters for draughts. One servant counts silver basins. Another checks sealed boxes holding combs, cloths, and scented powders. Everything must be ready before Elizabeth stirs, yet nothing must seem hurried. You pause beside a half-burned candle in a brass socket. Its wick bends into a black hook, and a servant trims it with tiny scissors. People believe an uneven flame may warn of a spirit, a death, or an unwelcome visitor. No one can quite agree whether the servant believes this, but he crosses himself anyway, then remembers the court is Protestant and pretends he was scratching his chin. Near the privy stairs, a small dog watches you. It has pale fur, sharp eyes, and the confident expression of a creature that knows it outranks most of the building. It follows when you move, pauses when you pause, and ignores every attempt to send it away. Soon its claws join the palace rhythm, tapping over boards, falling silent on rushes, then tapping again. The kitchens lie awake below. Fires are coaxed from banked embers and smoke creeps along beams darkened by decades of roasting meat. A pot of pottage thickens slowly. Coarse bread waits beneath cloth. Smoked fish hangs from hooks. This is not yet for the Queen's table. It belongs to servants working through morning on ale and whatever can be swallowed quickly. A scullion rubs his hands and mutters that rue in the shoe prevents illness. Some swear it discourages fleas, though the fleas appear unconvinced. You climb again toward the guarded apartments. The smell of kitchens fades beneath beeswax, dried roses, cedar chests, and the mineral chill of stone. Tapestries cover the walls, not merely for beauty, but to slow draughts. Behind one hangs a narrow passage where a watchman waits with a pike, his boots muddy from the courtyard. He tells you nothing. His silence is part of the ritual. At another door, a clerk records names by candlelight. His fingers are stained with ink and his parchment curls from damp. Each arrival matters. A missing attendant may suggest sickness, negligence, or a court quarrel. An unexpected face matters more. The Queen's safety begins not with swords, but with lists. Habits, remembered footsteps, and people noticing when something is misplaced. The first grey hint of morning gathers beyond the shutters. River mist presses against the palace. Bells answer across London, softened by distance. Outside, market carts grind through mud toward the city gates, paying tolls beneath watchful eyes. Inside, the household draws tighter around the sleeping chamber. You wait beside the brazier as charcoal settles with a red whisper. The dog curls near your feet. A lady removes her gloves and smooths her sleeves. A servant lifts a warming pan, checking that no coal sparks through its pierced lid. Another brings fresh water in a covered vessel guarded from dust, careless hands, and imagined poison. Then the corridor stills. Behind the final oak door, someone has moved. No command comes yet, no latch rises. Only a faint creak reaches the waiting rooms, followed by the hush of fabric and a woman's low murmur. Every servant straightens. The palace seems to inhale and hold its breath with you while the bell heard before dawn fades slowly into the winter air. The faint movement behind the oak door travels through the waiting rooms like a breeze crossing winter reeds. You see shoulders straighten, gloves disappear into sleeves, and sleepy faces become composed. Even the little dog uncurls beside the brazier, apparently aware that everyone must pretend they have never yawned. A senior lady of the bedchamber steps forward. At her waist hangs a ring of keys for chests, cupboards, and inner doors. She speaks to the woman guarding the threshold, and two names pass between them in murmurs. Rank decides who may approach first. Affection matters, influence matters, and old service matters, but none of these entirely defeats ceremony. At court, even friendship must wait its turn outside a locked door. The latch shifts. Warm air does not escape because there is scarcely any warmth to spare. Instead, you smell beeswax, wool, fading perfume, and the faint ash of a fire banked overnight. The chamber beyond is dim. Heavy curtains surround the royal bed, and tapestries soften the stone walls. A single candle glows near a prayer stool. Its light touches carved bedposts, a covered basin, and an embroidered cushion bearing the Tudor rose. You remain in the outer chamber, close enough to hear but not to intrude. Privacy here is measured rather strangely. The Queen sleeps behind curtains, yet servants stand only a few paces away. Her waking is personal, but it is also political. Every person admitted near the bed receives a visible sign of trust. A gentle woman kneels by the hearth and stirs the grey ashes. Beneath them a few coals still breathe. She adds dry splinters, then thin billets of wood, shielding the first flame with her hand. Smoke curls reluctantly upward. Another servant opens the chimney vent while muttering that a fire lit too quickly invites headaches. Some swear that rosemary cast into morning flames keeps sickness from a chamber. A sprig is added, whether from belief or because it smells better. The flame catches. Copper on the hearth begins to shine. A warming pan lies ready, its long handle polished smooth by years of use. Hot coals are placed inside, and the covered pan is moved beneath layers of linen to chase away the night's cold. A scorched royal sheet would be remembered longer than many military victories, which seems unfair but entirely possible. Near a cedar chest, attendants unfold the first garments of the day. They do not yet choose the Queen's public gown. That elaborate labour belongs to later hours. For now they prepare soft linen, a night rail, stockings, and a fur-lined wrapper to protect her from the chill. Each piece has been aired and examined for stains, loose threads, or anything suspicious. Pins are counted, ribbons are smoothed, seams are checked by touch. One woman presses the linen against her cheek to judge its warmth. Another holds a sleeve near the brazier, but not so near that sparks may reach it. The cloth smells faintly of lavender, stored among folded garments. People sometimes place dried herbs in chests to discourage moths, though the moths, like the fleas below stairs, appear to maintain their own opinions. Behind the bed curtains the Queen's voice sounds low and indistinct. You cannot catch the words. Perhaps she asks the hour. Perhaps she requests more heat. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on how Elizabeth greets the morning. Some describe alertness, others long pauses in colder years. What matters here is that her attendants respond instantly, as though the day has begun by royal permission. The curtains part only slightly. A trusted lady enters the enclosed space and offers a greeting shaped by custom. Another brings the warmed wrapper. A third stands ready with fresh linen folded over both hands, never tucked casually beneath an arm. Cloth touching the Queen must be presented with care. It is lifted, displayed, and passed forward almost as an offering. You hear the soft movement of bedding and the creak of ropes beneath the mattress. Tudor beds rest upon woven cords that loosen with use, giving rise to the practical need to tighten them. A servant may have checked those cords the previous evening, sparing the Queen the indignity of sinking toward the floor before breakfast. Royal majesty depends on many invisible knots. The chamber grows brighter as shutters open a finger's width. Dawn is still colourless over the Thames. Mist hides the opposite bank, and a barge bell sounds somewhere below. Cold air slips inward, prompting an immediate protest from the hearth, and several silent expressions from the ladies. The shutters close again. England may be ruled from this room, but weather remains stubbornly independent. A page arrives with a covered cup, then waits outside the inner threshold. No drink is offered yet. Nothing proceeds until the proper attendant receives it. The same is true of messages. A folded paper sealed with wax rests upon a cushion, but politics must wait while linen is arranged and the Queen's feet find warmed slippers. The little dog slips through the doorway before anyone can stop it. For one dreadful moment, every servant watches. Then a familiar hand reaches beyond the curtain, and the animal vanishes inside. No rebuke follows. The household breathes again. Apparently, rank may be inherited, granted, purchased, or achieved by being small enough to ignore rules. As the fire steadies, the Queen sits upright behind the curtains. The women nearest her move with practiced silence, offering the warmed rail, settling the wrapper across her shoulders, and arranging cushions at her back. No hurried gesture appears, although every gesture has been rehearsed by repetition. You stand amid the waiting court, and understand that waking is not merely waking here. It is an entrance onto a stage before the audience is allowed to see the player. The cold chamber, the guarded linen, the counted pins, the warmed slippers, and the women holding their breath all transform a private human moment into the first royal ceremony of the day. The curtains remain partly drawn while the first warmth gathers around the bed, and you hear the quiet exchange of cloth basin and whispered instruction. The Queen does not rise directly into the cold. Instead, the room is prepared around her body, one careful degree at a time, as though winter itself must be negotiated with rank and patience. A silver basin is placed upon a small table near the hearth. The water inside is not steaming. Too much heat is thought weakening, while cold water may shock the humours and invite illness. Tudor physicians speak endlessly of balance, often with such confidence that you might suspect the four humours pay them rent. The water is therefore only mildly warmed, then covered again to protect it from dust, soot, and any hand not trusted. A lady pours rosewater from a narrow-necked flask. Its fragrance lifts through the chamber, delicate above the heavier scents of wool ashes and beeswax. Another adds a little rosemary infusion. Some swear that rosemary sharpens memory, guards the heart, and drives away corruption in the air. No one can quite agree whether the Queen values the remedy, the fragrance, or simply the orderliness of the habit. You watch a square of fine linen dipped into the basin and wrung carefully. Elizabeth washes by cloth rather than plunging herself into a bath. Full bathing is not unknown, but it is inconvenient, cold, expensive, and treated with suspicion by many who fear that hot water opens the pores. Once opened, those invisible gates are believed to admit poisonous vapors, plague-bearing air, or any passing mischief the atmosphere cares to offer. The cloth touches her face, neck, and hands. Each movement is slow. Fresh pieces of linen replace those already used. Servants carry damp cloths away immediately, for royal cleanliness depends as much upon removing objects as presenting them. A covered ewer waits beside the basin, and a maid guards it with the solemnity of a chapel relic. You are close enough to notice that clean linen carries nearly as much importance as clean water. Shirts and shifts absorb sweat and oils, and changing them may be considered a kind of dry washing. Wealth makes this possible. A village woman may own only a few linen garments, washing them beside a river when weather permits. Here chests hold stacks of folded cloth, scented with lavender-dried rose petals and perhaps a little cedar to discourage insects. The Queen extends her hands. Her fingers are wiped, dried, and inspected. Nails are cleaned with a small, pointed tool of bone or metal. The instrument looks alarming until you remember that almost every harmless Tudor object appears capable of minor surgery. Rings have not yet been placed upon her fingers, so the attendants work without catching jewels in the cloth. A servant opens a small box containing tooth powder. The mixture may include salt, dried herbs, powdered sage, or finely crushed substances best left unnamed before sleep. A folded linen rag serves in place of a modern brush rubbed gently across the teeth. Other households use twigs, feathers, or cloth with aromatic powders. Some recipes recommend vinegar or wine, while certain bold remedies include burned bread and ashes. Even now it is hard to tell whether every preparation attributed to Elizabeth truly reaches her daily table. Court gossip improves any story by adding costly ingredients and alarming confidence, yet the concern for breath, teeth, and appearance is real. A queen who receives ambassadors at close range cannot smell like yesterday's onions, however firmly she rules the realm. After the teeth are cleaned, scented water is offered for rinsing. A small towel follows. It is soft, white, and edged with embroidery, though the embroidery serves little purpose beyond proving that even drying one's mouth may become ceremonial. The dog watches from the bed with grave attention, perhaps hoping the powder is edible and perhaps already knowing better. Perfume comes next, but not in a cloud. A pomander rests nearby, a pierced metal sphere containing fragrant substances such as ambergris, musk, rose cloves, and resin. It may be worn at the girdle later, for now a little scent touches linen and skin. Sweet smells are not merely pleasing. Many believe they defend the body against foul air because disease is often blamed on corruption carried by stench. A physician waiting in the outer room has sent word that the morning is damp and unfavourable. He recommends keeping the throat covered and avoiding excessive exposure to river mist. His advice is accepted because it agrees perfectly with what everyone already intends to do. Physicians are often most successful when prescribing warm clothes in winter. The basin water cools, used cloths vanish into a covered basket. Fresh linen is unfolded for the Queen's neck and shoulders. Her skin is dried completely, since lingering dampness is thought dangerous. A warmed cloth presses briefly against her hands, and the fur-lined wrapper closes more tightly around her. You look toward the narrow window where pale daylight struggles through horn panes and mist. Somewhere below, laundresses begin their own labour with lye wooden paddles and aching fingers. They will scrub, rinse, beat, dry, fold, and return the linen that makes this elegant ritual possible. Their work remains unseen, but every white cloth in the chamber carries the memory of river water, ash, soap smoke, and cold hands. Beyond the door, a maid sprinkles dried meadowsweet among the discarded rushes, believing its scent calms the stomach and discourages fever. Whether it does either is doubtful, but it makes the corridor gentler for everyone waiting outside. The Queen's face is now clean-scented and ready for what follows. On a nearby table, boxes of powders, pigments, combs, and small mirrors wait beneath cloth covers. The women exchange a glance. Washing has removed the night, but the public face of mourning has not yet been built. The half-burned candle sputters once, then steadies, while rosewater fades into the warmer scent of the room. The rosewater fragrance has scarcely faded when the covered boxes on the table are opened one after another, and the chamber changes from a place of washing into a quiet workshop of transformation. You stand near the hearth while a lady draws back the cloth, protecting a polished mirror. Its surface is small, slightly clouded, and expensive enough to deserve its own servant. In the uncertain light it returns no perfect reflection, only a softened face, surrounded by candle glow. Elizabeth settles more firmly against the cushions. The fur-lined wrapper remains around her shoulders, and a strip of clean linen protects the garment beneath her chin. Nothing is hurried. Cosmetics belong to the same guarded rhythm as keys, prayers, and sealed cups. Each jar is opened, examined, and presented by the proper hand. A pale preparation waits in a shallow dish. It may contain white lead mixed with vinegar, a cosmetic often called ceruse. Though recipes vary from household to household, some swear that the finest version must be left in clay pots above vinegar until the metal blooms into white powder. No one can quite agree how often Elizabeth uses such mixtures or how heavily, but the ideal of a smooth, pale complexion carries real power at court. Paleness suggests rank because it suggests distance from fields, ovens, riverbanks, and market roads. A face untouched by sun announces that others labour outdoors on your behalf. It also evokes youth, delicacy, and control. The symbolism is impressive, even if the ingredients are less reassuring. Tudor beauty, you begin to suspect, is sometimes a negotiation between magnificence and poisoning oneself very politely. To look browned by sunlight would suggest too many hours beneath open skies, a dangerous resemblance to life. At Whitehall, even complexion obeys hierarchy, and the sun itself seems expected to request permission before touching the sovereign too closely. A lady tests the mixture on the back of her own hand before touching the Queen. Then she applies it with a small pad of cloth, smoothing it across forehead, cheeks, and chin. The work proceeds in thin layers. Candlelight softens the edges. The pale surface disguises marks left by illness, fatigue, age, and the restless nights that guarded doors cannot prevent. Nearby sits a little pot of red pigment. Colour is added carefully to lips and cheeks, perhaps from plant dyes, cochineal red ochre, or mixtures whose precise contents disappear into household secrecy. Too much would appear theatrical. Too little would leave the face bloodless beneath the white. The attendants seek a controlled warmth, the suggestion of health arranged by art. A maid brings a vial of oil, scented with roses. Another offers a salve made with beeswax, herbs, and animal fat for dry skin. Court remedies may include almond oil, honey, egg, white lemon, or distilled flower waters. Some recipes promise to erase freckles, soften scars, or restore youth before supper. Their optimism is often their strongest ingredient. One preparation is said to contain crushed pearls. Whether it truly does is impossible to know. Ground pearl appears in medicines and cosmetics because people believe precious substances carry precious virtues. Gold may strengthen the heart, coral may guard against danger, and pearls may preserve purity. The court possesses enough wealth to turn jewellery into powder, though a sensible oyster would probably object. Elizabeth's attendants study every blemish. A dark spot is covered with extra pale paste. A reddened patch receives soothing salve. Fine lines near the eyes are softened by powder and shadow. The mirror is raised, lowered, and angled toward the window, though the window offers little more than grey mist. The Queen watches closely. Her face belongs to her, yet it also belongs to England. You sense this truth in the silence. An ordinary woman may greet family while still sleepy and uncombed. A monarch receives courtiers who read meaning into every mark. Pallor may be called illness, colour may be called anger, a frown may unsettle an ambassador, a tired eye may become a rumour before noon. The painted face is not merely vanity, it is a shield against interpretation. Powder drifts into the air when a soft puff touches the Queen's temples. It catches in candlelight like flour above a baker's board. The dog sneezes from the bed and 3 ladies freeze as though Spain has invaded through the chimney. Elizabeth murmurs something too low for you to hear. The dog is forgiven. International peace survives. A small patch may be prepared for a stubborn mark, cut from silk or fine fabric and fixed carefully to the skin. Such beauty patches become fashionable in later courts, though dark spots and decorative coverings already have practical uses. Even now it is hard to tell whether every dramatic detail told about Elizabeth's face belongs to her daily routine or to later imagination. Legends prefer thick paint, secret scars, and frightened mirrors, yet the deeper ritual remains clear. Each stroke separates the private woman from the public queen. The face emerging before you is smooth, pale, composed, and difficult to read. It offers no confession of cold chambers, aching joints, political worry, or the passing of years. It becomes an emblem as deliberate as a royal seal. The attendants clean their tools. Used cloths disappear into covered baskets. Jar lids are wiped and replaced. Nothing stained with royal cosmetics is left carelessly about. A servant counts the small containers before returning them to their chest, because poison, theft, and gossip all thrive where inventories grow lazy. Outside, the bells mark another hour. The palace is fully awake now. Footsteps multiply beyond the door, and the smell of coarse bread rises faintly from below. In the chamber, however, the pace remains measured. Elizabeth studies the softened mirror once more, then gives the slightest nod. The painted surface is complete, but the frame around it is still unfinished. Beyond the cosmetics, weight combs, wigs, pearls, starched linen, jewelled pins, and gowns heavy enough to make dignity a form of endurance. The Queen's nod releases the attendants into another layer of labour. The painted face now waits for its architecture, hair linen, silk, velvet pearls that will turn a seated woman into the figure courtiers expect to see. You remain near the cedar chests while lids rise and the room fills with the scents of starch, orris root, old wood, and garments. A maid brings combs of ivory. Another carries brushes made with stiff bristles. Elizabeth's natural hair is treated carefully, though the court knows her public appearance often depends upon arranged pieces, curls, and wigs in shades of red and gold. Some swear that her hair once shone like copper. Others insist that age and illness make the wigs necessary. No one can quite agree where truth ends and portraiture begins. The hair is divided, smoothed, and pinned close to the head. Warmed cloths soften stubborn strands. A little scented powder freshens the roots. The powder contains iris or violet and perhaps enough flour to make a hungry kitchen boy stare with professional interest. Pins are counted before use, then counted again because sharp objects near a sovereign encourage arithmetic. A prepared wig rests upon a wooden stand. Its curls have been shaped overnight with ribbons, heated rods, and skilled fingers. The colour is bright, but not careless, designed to catch candlelight and frame the pale face. The lady responsible tests its inner lining, checks every fastening, and searches for rough edges. A queen may command armies, but one poorly placed hairpin can still conquer the afternoon. The wig settles over the pinned hair. Attendants adjust it by fractions, tilting the front, lifting a curl, pressing another beside the temple. Elizabeth watches through the mirror. Her expression reveals little. The women know the desired shape exactly since repetition has turned their hands into memory. Next comes the linen, A clean shift has already replaced the night garment beneath the wrapper. Now a stiffened structure is prepared around the torso. A bodice supports the body and creates the long controlled line admired at court. It is not the later iron cage imagined by careless storytellers, but layers of fabric, whalebone reeds, or other stiff materials can make breathing an exercise in diplomacy. The attendants tighten the laces. They pause, smooth the linen, then tighten again. Nothing should wrinkle beneath the gown. The queen sits straight as pressure gathers around her ribs. You feel grateful that your own tunic is held together by a belt and optimism. A farthingale follows, shaping the skirts away from the body. Its hoops, or stiffened bands, create space beneath heavy fabric and make the queen appear broader, grander, and almost architectural. Walking in such clothing requires practice, especially through narrow doors. Palace carpenters may build entrances for people, but fashion frequently negotiates separate terms. Stockings are drawn carefully over the legs and secured with garters. Soft shoes wait nearby, embroidered and lined for warmth. Their soles will never meet the worst mud outside the palace, though even royal floors carry grit rush fragments and the occasional evidence of an undisciplined dog. The main gown is lifted from its chest by several women. Velvet dark as wine forms the body, while sleeves display cloth of gold and patterned silk. The garment is heavy enough that its beauty seems partly measured in endurance. Pearls run along seams, small jewels catch firelight. Every surface announces wealth, but also alliance, trade, taxation, distant mines, embroiderers, and ships crossing dangerous seas. The gown is lowered around Elizabeth and fastened piece by piece. Sleeves are tied on with points. A stomacher is set into place, stiff and richly decorated. Hooks disappear beneath fabric. Ribbons are drawn smooth. One attendant kneels to arrange the hem, while another guards the train from the hearth. Then comes the ruff. Starched linen rises around the queen's neck in pleated curves, white and precise. It has been shaped with heated irons and careful setting sticks. Starch itself is still novel enough to inspire suspicion, admiration, and complaints from laundresses. Some believe excessive starch weakens the neck. Others simply believe it makes everyone look as though they have been trapped inside an elegant pastry. The ruff frames Elizabeth's face like a halo designed by a mathematician. Its whiteness brightens the cosmetics, while its width keeps others at a respectful distance. A small misfold is corrected. A pin vanishes beneath lace. The effect is severe, luminous, and unmistakably royal. Jewels arrive in locked cases. The senior lady opens them with one of the iron keys at her waist. Rings, brooches, pearl ropes, and jeweled pendants lie against velvet. Their selection is not random. A ruby may suggest courage. Pearls speak of purity. Diamonds imply constancy. Certain stones are believed to resist poison, strengthen the heart, or warn their wearer by changing colour. An amulet is considered before being hidden beneath the gown. It may contain a prayer, a fragment of scripture, or some substance praised by physicians. Protestant teaching discourages old charms, yet ancient habits linger stubbornly beneath new theology. Even now it is hard to tell whether such objects are worn from faith, caution, memory, or the simple belief that additional protection cannot hurt. Pearls are woven through the wig. A jeweled ornament settles above the brow. Rings fill several fingers, though one is left free until later. The pomander from the washing table is attached at the waist, carrying its fragrant defense against corrupted air. At last, the fur-lined wrapper is removed. Elizabeth rises carefully. The farthingale settles. The train falls behind her in a dark, shining river. Every attendant steps back, examining the whole construction from crown to hem. The woman who woke behind curtains has vanished from ordinary sight. Before you stands the Queen's public body, built from linen, discipline, jewels, and weight. Beyond the door, courtiers wait to read every colour and pearl, as though the gown itself speaks. A chapel bell sounds. Elizabeth turns toward it, and the entire chamber moves with her. The chapel bell draws Elizabeth from the chamber, and you follow the moving household as the heavy gown whispers over the rushes. Her attendants lift the train above uneven boards. The little dog trots beneath the skirts until a page scoops it aside, receiving a look of injured dignity, severe enough to trouble his conscience. The Queen does not go directly into the great public chapel where choirs, courtiers, and ambassadors may observe her devotion. First, she turns through a narrower passage behind the privy chamber past an oak door reinforced with iron straps. A guard unlocks it. Another waits within. The door closes softly behind the chosen company, leaving most of the court outside with its petitions, perfumes, and rehearsed bows. You enter a small oratory warmed by a brazier and beeswax candles. The ceiling is low beside the public halls, and the stone walls carry pale traces where older images may once have hung. A prayer desk faces a simple table covered in dark cloth. Upon it rests an English Bible, a silver cross without elaborate figures, and a small hourglass for measuring sermons that might otherwise wander into eternity. Light slips through a narrow window glazed with cloudy panes. The Thames is invisible beyond the mist, but you hear water against the palace stairs and the distant call of boatmen. Inside, the air smells of wax, warmed wool, rosemary smoke, and the leather of bookbindings. Elizabeth kneels carefully, assisted only enough to protect the gown from crushing beneath her. The ruff remains perfectly arranged. Pearls catch the candlelight. Her public magnificence has entered a private room, yet the ritual here changes its meaning. Before God, even a queen must bow, though she does so with considerably better embroidery than most. A chaplain waits beside the desk. He reads from Scripture in English, his voice low and steady. The words are familiar, repeated across years of danger, illness, rebellion, and uncertainty. Elizabeth listens without interruption. Her hands rest upon a cushion. Rings flash whenever a flame shifts. The court is Protestant now, and official worship avoids many customs associated with the old religion. Yet old habits do not vanish merely because proclamations command them to. Some servants still whisper a saint's name when thunder shakes the windows. Others keep pilgrim badges hidden in chests or touch a doorway where a holy image once stood. No one can quite agree whether such gestures are faith-fear or memory refusing to obey policy. Behind a curtain near the wall, a reliquary survives from earlier days. It is not displayed openly. Perhaps it contains a fragment of bone, a thread of cloth, or nothing more sacred than dust and a convincing label. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. A suspicious monk once claimed it came from a saint who had somehow left enough fingers across Europe to supply several complete hands. Elizabeth does not approach it, still its presence gives the room a curious tension, as though England's old devotions wait quietly behind fabric, while the new order reads aloud from a translated Bible. The chaplain finishes the passage and offers a prayer for the realm, the council, the harvest, sailors at sea, and protection from enemies. He also prays for the Queen's health. At that, one lady lowers her eyes. Illness at court is discussed in whispers because the body of the monarch is never merely private. A cough can disturb markets, a fever can awaken foreign hopes. Elizabeth remains kneeling through a measured silence. You hear the charcoal settle in the brazier. Somewhere beyond the locked door, someone shifts a boot and is immediately still again. The palace seems to narrow around this room. A secretary has placed a folded list beside the prayer desk. It bears names of people requesting intercession. A sick nobleman, a woman awaiting childbirth, a captain crossing winter seas, and a servant whose family has suffered fever. The Queen touches the paper but does not read every name aloud. She knows that royal prayer is itself a form of favour. A small cushion filled with dried herbs supports her knees. Lavender and southernwood rise from it. Some believe southernwood protects against infection and melancholy. Others tuck it into clothing to discourage moths. Its success against sadness is uncertain, but the moths appear respectful enough to remain absent from the Queen's gown. The chaplain turns the hourglass. Sand begins to fall, though no sermon follows today. Elizabeth prefers brevity in some matters, especially when breakfast waits and councillors have already filled several rooms with paper. The hourglass remains as a warning to religious enthusiasm that time, like access to the monarch, is limited. She reads a few lines herself. Her voice is clear, educated and deliberate. Latin and French may belong to diplomacy and scholarship, but English here binds sovereign scripture and kingdom together. The attendants listen with heads bowed. When she finishes, a lady offers a small cloth scented with rosewater. Elizabeth touches it to her fingers. Another adjusts the edge of the ruff, which has survived, kneeling with only the slightest disturbance. Such survival feels nearly miraculous, though perhaps starch deserves the credit. Before rising, Elizabeth pauses once more. Even now it is hard to tell whether these private moments bring comfort, discipline, fear, or all three. She has lived in a world where belief can save, condemn, crown, or imprison. Prayer is devotion, but it is also caution. Words spoken before heaven may be repeated on earth. The chaplain closes the Bible. A silver clasp clicks into place. Candles are snuffed one by one, except for the half-burned taper carried from the chamber. Its flame bends as the door opens. Cold corridor air enters. The guards straighten. Courtiers beyond the passage resume their quiet breathing. Elizabeth rises, gathers the weight of her gown, and steps back toward the waiting palace while the hidden reliquary remains behind its curtain, keeping whatever secret it has kept through every change of faith. The hidden reliquary disappears behind you as the oak door closes and the Queen's procession returns to the privy chamber where breakfast waits under cloth and watchful eyes. The palace is brighter now, though winter daylight remains grey. It lies across the rushes like watered milk, touching silver cups, covered dishes, and servants who have rehearsed every movement. You follow at a respectful distance. The dog has escaped the page and trots beside the Queen's train, convinced that prayer should be followed by food. In this matter, the animal's theology is difficult to dispute. Breakfast is not served casually. Before any dish reaches Elizabeth, it passes through kitchens, corridors, guarded doors, and pairs of hands whose names are known. A yeoman of the pantry checks bread. An officer of the buttery oversees drink. A servant confirms the seals over covered vessels. Each person stands within a chain of responsibility because a broken chain invites suspicion. The table is modest compared with a public feast. A white cloth covers it. Silver plate rests upon a sideboard polished until candle flames appear doubled in its surface. A salt cellar stands not merely because salt is valuable, but because its position expresses order and rank. To sit above the salt is honor. To sit below it is to understand one's place before asking for onions. Elizabeth takes her chair. Her farthingale settles around it with resistance, and an attendant arranges the train so no jewelled edge touches the hearth. The ruff makes turning her head an exercise in geometry, yet she appears composed as though linen architecture is natural attire for eating bread. A servant presents water for hand-washing. It pours from a silver ewer into a basin held beneath. The Queen touches her fingers to it, then dries them upon fine linen. Rose-water perfumes the air. This washing is practical and ceremonial, for hands touch food directly, and cleanliness before a meal carries moral as well as bodily meaning. The first covered dish is brought forward. Its lid remains closed until an officer examines the seal. Wax has not been broken. Cloth knots are intact. A taster receives a small portion before the Queen does. He chews slowly, while everyone nearby pretends not to watch for signs of collapse. It is a peculiar profession requiring a calm face, a strong stomach, and little imagination. No poison reveals itself. The room breathes again without admitting it has held its breath. The dish contains light pottage enriched with herbs and perhaps a little meat broth. Beside it lie slices of manchet, a finer white bread made from carefully sifted flour. Most people beyond the palace walls eat darker loaves mixed with rye or barley. Here whiteness again announces privilege even in the humble shape of breakfast. Smoked fish is offered along with preserved fruit and a small dish of butter. Ale may appear, though wine or diluted wine is also possible according to the day, the physician's advice, and the Queen's preference. Water is not universally avoided, but its quality varies and officers take care over every source. A cup drawn from a suspect vessel can inspire more debate than a border treaty. Elizabeth eats sparingly. She tastes the pottage, breaks a little bread, and accepts only a narrow piece of fish. Attendants study the smallest signs. If she refuses a dish, someone will ask whether it displeased her, whether the seasoning was wrong, or whether her stomach feels unsettled. A queen's appetite becomes public intelligence before crumbs are cleared. A physician waits not close enough to intrude, but close enough to be summoned. He has advised caution because the morning is damp. He prefers warming foods and warns against too much raw fruit in winter. According to humoral theory, food must balance the body's qualities of heat, cold moisture, and dryness. Pepper warms, cucumbers cool, melons may be treacherous. Almost anything delicious becomes suspicious once a physician has enough parchment. A pomander hangs at Elizabeth's waist, releasing cloves and resin whenever she moves. Pleasant scents are thought to guard against corrupted air, and some swear that poison may be detected when a gemstone clouds or a unicorn horn vessel changes colour. True unicorn horn is usually narwhal tusk brought through northern trade, though merchants rarely ruin a sale by mentioning marine biology. One cup is inspected twice. Its rim is wiped. The drink is poured first into a testing vessel, then returned. No one can quite agree whether every precaution reflects genuine danger or the theatre of danger, but the distinction matters little to those whose lives depend upon care. Courts remember attempts, rumours, and sudden illnesses. They also remember servants blamed for accidents they never intended. You notice that every utensil has a place. Knives are presented handle first. Napkins are folded and watched. Leftover fragments are gathered rather than abandoned. Even crumbs may matter for people. Fear not only poison but magic. Hair-nail pairings, cloth and food touched by a person can be used in charms, at least according to household superstition. A royal crust is therefore not merely a crust. The dog sits beneath the table, eyes fixed upon the fish. It receives nothing from the Queen's plate. A sympathetic maid lets one scrap fall from her fingers, then looks innocent enough for diplomatic service. Beyond the chamber bells sound over London. Market stalls open beneath striped awnings. Apprentices carry baskets through mud. Bakers sell yesterday's bread more cheaply, while taverns warm pots of ale for labourers. Inside, Elizabeth lifts her cup once more, drinks little, and sets it down. The meal ends before it has become a feast. Hands are washed again, dishes are covered. Remaining food returns through the guarded chain by which it came. The taster still stands upright, which improves everyone's mood. A secretary waits at the door with sealed papers. Courtiers gather beyond him. Breakfast has guarded the Queen's body for another hour, and now the palace prepares to display that body before the court. The secretary's sealed papers remain unopened as Elizabeth rises from breakfast, because before ink and argument claim the morning, the court must first see her. Servants draw back the chamber doors, guards settle their halberds, ladies lift the dark train, and the Queen steps into the gallery. You move with the household into a corridor lined with tapestries. Hunts, saints, and ancient victories ripple gently whenever a draught enters from the river. Fresh rushes cover the boards to soften the smell of wet boots. The palace has been awake for hours, yet the public day begins only now, as though London itself waits for Elizabeth to cross a threshold. At the first doorway, an usher announces the Queen in a voice trained to reach the far wall. Courtiers straighten in a wave. Hats come off, knees bend, silk sleeves brush the floor. Those nearest the entrance bow first, while others follow. Elizabeth pauses just long enough for the room to understand that she has noticed it. Then she advances with grave and measured purpose. The procession is slow. Her gown demands space, and dignity demands more. A gentleman walking backward keeps his eyes upon her while somehow avoiding stools, dogs, and projecting corners. This is considered elegant service, though it resembles a careful surrender to furniture. A nobleman kneels with a folded request held above both hands. He does not thrust it forward. An attendant receives it, inspects the seal, and places it with other papers upon a cushion. Elizabeth asks a brief question about his county. Her voice is calm, but the man's answer arrives too quickly, as if he has spent the night rehearsing every possible syllable. She remembers his name. That small act changes his face more than a purse of silver might. Memory is one of the Queen's quiet weapons. She recalls family connections, old services, troublesome neighbours, and compliments offered months before. A courtier who feels remembered feels favoured, and a favoured courtier often becomes remarkably obedient. You pass beneath a carved arch where a sprig of rowan has been tucked behind the woodwork. Some servant believes rowan turns away witchcraft and ill luck. Official religion may disapprove of such charms, but no one has removed it. No one can quite agree whether this is neglect, secret belief, or simple unwillingness to test the charm by disturbing it. Beyond the arch lies the presence chamber. The air is warmer from Body's candles and a wide hearth where oak logs burn. Above the fire hangs a cloth of estate bearing royal arms. A raised chair stands beneath it, though Elizabeth does not sit immediately. Instead, she moves among those admitted, allowing the room to organize itself around her. An ambassador bows deeply. His interpreter waits half a pace behind. Elizabeth greets him in his own language, and surprise flickers across his face before training restores it. She asks after his sovereign, the winter roads, and the health of a mutual acquaintance. Nothing in the exchange appears accidental. Courtesy becomes inquiry, inquiry becomes warning, and warning wears the pleasant mask of conversation. A young courtier presents a small jewel shaped like a ship. He explains that its pearl sail represents constancy through troubled seas. Elizabeth studies it, smiles and praises the workmanship without promising anything in return. The young man retreats glowing with hope. The older courtiers watch him with the patient sympathy reserved for someone who has not yet learned that a royal smile may feed ambition for years. The Queen's hand extends toward an elderly woman who has waited near the wall. The woman kneels and kisses it. Rings flash against her brow. Touching the monarch is not casual. It is granted, observed, and remembered. Some people believe the royal touch carries healing virtue, particularly for certain illnesses. Elizabeth does not encourage every old claim, yet majesty gathers legends the way velvet gathers dust. You notice an usher guiding bodies with tiny gestures. A raised finger opens a path. A glance stops an eager petitioner. A quiet cough warns someone that his beau has lasted too long. Court ceremony depends upon such invisible labour. Without ushers, the glorious machinery of monarchy would soon become a crowded room where everyone argues about whose sleeve is trapped under whose shoe. Elizabeth continues through another gallery. Windows reveal the Thames beyond grey, beneath lifting mist. Barges move between stairs. On the far bank, smoke rises over roofs, workshops, and muddy lanes. Bells answer one another across the city, while market tolls are counted beneath gatehouses, and apprentices carry baskets of fish through morning rain. Inside, the Queen's route is watched from every side. A smile is given to one lady, a nod to another, and a cooler glance to a man whose recent absence has been noticed. Nothing is explained. Explanation would weaken the effect. By noon, 3 versions of each gesture will travel through the palace, all confidently wrong. The dog still follows, pausing beside a carved bench where it finds the suspicious monk from the earlier corridor. He is not truly suspicious, perhaps only narrow-eyed and damp from the river stairs. The animal sniffs his robe, sneezes, and moves on. The monk looks offended, which is perhaps the first honest reaction in the room. At last, Elizabeth reaches the council door. The procession slows. Courtiers bow once more as access narrows around her. Behind that oak barrier wait dispatches, maps, petitions, and men prepared to speak. For far too long she turns before entering and lets her gaze pass over the gathered court. For one quiet moment everyone feels seen. Then the door opens and the public smile fades into something sharper. The council door closes behind Elizabeth, muting the silk whispers and hopeful breathing of the court. You enter with a smaller company and find a long chamber warmed by a fire that burns more for appearance than comfort. A broad table waits beneath the windows. Upon it lie dispatches from ports, counties, embassies, garrisons, and households whose owners believe their troubles deserve royal urgency. Others arrive stained by rain-horse sweat or the fingers of messengers who have ridden through mud for days. A broken cartwheel has delayed one packet from the north, and the clerk mentions this twice as though repetition might repair it. Elizabeth takes the chair at the head of the table. Her gown spreads around her, controlled and brilliant, while counsellors settle according to rank. The secretary from breakfast places the first sealed paper before her and bows. She does not open it immediately. Instead, she asks who carried it when it arrived, and who has seen the contents. The questions are quiet, but every answer is recorded. A letter read by 3 men is not the same letter as one read by 30, and a secret repeated in a corridor often reaches foreign ears before it reaches the council table. The seal is examined, then broken. Elizabeth reads slowly. Her eyes move across the lines while the room waits. She has scribes who can summarize every page, yet she prefers to see certain words herself. A phrase may reveal fear, ambition, or concealment. Even the pressure of a pen may suggest whether a writer was calm, hurried, cold, or lying. An ink-stained clerk stands nearby with sharpened quills. He keeps several ready, because points split without warning. Quills are cut from goose feathers, though swan feathers may serve for larger writing. A penknife rests beside the ink horn. The knife is practical, but even practical blades remain where guards can see them. The first dispatch concerns coastal defences. A councillor argues for immediate spending. Another warns that stores are low after winter. A third believes local officials exaggerate danger to obtain money. Elizabeth listens, turning one ring slowly around her finger. When the men finish, she asks a question none has prepared for. How many barrels of powder are truly dry? You begin to understand the rhythm. She does not merely receive advice, she tests its seams. Claims are compared with earlier letters. A counsellor who contradicts himself is not corrected at once. Elizabeth allows the inconsistency to remain on the table until everyone notices it, which is far more uncomfortable. Another paper concerns a manor dispute over woodland rights. Villagers claim ancient permission to gather fallen branches. A landholder has fenced the track and imposed a toll. Such matters may seem small beside foreign policy, yet winter fuel determines whether cottages remain warm. The petition carries rough marks from people unable to write their names. Their priest has added an explanation. Some swear that touching a petition to a saint's relic makes rulers more likely to grant it. This one bears a greasy mark near the corner, perhaps from a chapel lamp, perhaps from breakfast. No one can quite agree, and the clerk says nothing. Elizabeth asks that the customs of the manor be checked before judgment. She refuses to decide merely because the landholder possesses better parchment. The matter is postponed, but not forgotten. A note is entered into the register, and a messenger will carry questions back along wet roads. Postponement is one of her habits. Courtiers complain that she delays, changes her mind, asks again, and keeps every faction uncertain. Yet delay can be useful. While others wait, tempers cool, evidence appears, enemies reveal impatience, and allies compete to offer better terms. A decision withheld remains a form of power. The councillors know this, though they dislike living inside it. A foreign letter arrives in cipher. The secretary unfolds a second sheet containing the key. Symbols become words through patient substitution. The decoded message warns of ships, marriages, money, and promises made privately. Elizabeth reads it twice, then holds it near the candle without burning it. The half-burned flame from dawn flickers beside her hand. She asks whether the ambassador smiled when delivering the original message. The secretary pauses. He did. That answer seems to matter. A tray of warm ale enters for the councillors along with coarse bread and cheese. Elizabeth takes neither. The men drink carefully, trying not to stain papers or appear thirsty. One councillor dips bread into the ale when he thinks no one watches. The dog beneath the table watches everything. Outside, rain begins against the windows. The sound softens the chamber and deepens the smell of wet wool. A monastery bell carries faintly across the river, marking an hour already consumed by questions. The suspicious monk passes along the gallery beyond the door, holding copied pages beneath his robe. A final matter concerns a nobleman requesting permission to leave court. His mother is ill, he writes, and family duty requires him. Another report suggests he wishes to avoid questioning about missing funds. Elizabeth reads both documents, then folds them together. She grants neither permission nor refusal. Instead, she sends kind wishes to the mother and requests a clearer account of the money. The councillors exchange glances. The nobleman remains trapped by courtesy. Even now it is hard to tell whether Elizabeth's delays arise from caution, instinct calculation, or reluctance to surrender choices. Perhaps they arise from all four. She has survived because she knows that once a royal word leaves the mouth, it cannot be recalled as easily as a private thought. At last, she signs several lesser warrants. Sand is sprinkled over the wet ink, then shaken away. Seals are warmed, pressed, and checked. Other documents remain unanswered beneath their weights. The council door opens again. Beyond it, the palace waits for decisions that have not yet been made, while Elizabeth rises from the table carrying more possibilities than she brought into the room. The unanswered papers remain behind their weights. As Elizabeth leaves the council chamber and the palace changes its rhythm once more, bells carry the morning toward noon, fires burn higher in the kitchens, along the galleries servants move with covered dishes, folded cloths, silver vessels, and the grave expressions of people transporting objects more important than themselves. You follow the Queen toward the dining chamber, where ceremony has begun without her. The room is warm from candles and a broad hearth. Fresh rushes lie across the floor, mixed with sweet flag and dried herbs. Tapestries soften the walls, showing gardens, hunting scenes, and saints who appear never to have waited for a delayed course. A raised table stands beneath the cloth of estate. Her chair faces the room. Everyone can see her, while she can observe everyone else without appearing to stare. At court, even furniture participates in government. Before she sits, the royal table is approached in procession. Officers carry dishes from the kitchens beneath covers of cloth and metal. A guard walks beside them. The food has crossed passages, courtyards, and guarded thresholds, each stage witnessed by someone whose duty is to remember what happened. The kitchen lies far below where spits turn before roaring fires, and boys carry wood through smoke thick enough to season their lungs. Great pots hold broth sauces and stewed meats. Bread is cut into trenchers, thick pieces that support food and absorb juices. At court, leftovers often pass downward through servants, almoners, and the poor. The dishes arrive at the sideboard, seals are checked, covers are lifted only at the proper moment, steam escapes carrying scents of roasted capon, herbs, butter, and wine. Elizabeth approaches the basin for ceremonial hand-washing. A noble attendant kneels with the silver bowl. Another pours scented water from an ewer. Rose water runs over the Queen's fingers in a thin stream. A linen towel follows, presented across both hands. The gesture is practical, but it also announces purity, order, and readiness. Some swear that sage placed near the basin protects against fever. Others insist that it strengthens memory and lengthens life. No one can quite agree whether the sprig beside the ewer is medicine or decoration. It smells clean enough for a crowded palace. Elizabeth takes her place. The company bows before sitting. No one begins before she does. Napkins are unfolded. Knives are laid with handles outward. Forks exist but remain unusual in England and are regarded by some as suspiciously foreign. Fingers, spoons, and knives perform most of the work. A courtier who handles food gracefully displays breeding. One who drops sauce displays honesty. The first course is presented with a flourish, quieter than music, but just as rehearsed. A carver steps forward. He slices the capon according to rules learned through long practice, separating joints neatly and presenting chosen portions. Carving is not kitchen labor here. It is an honorable skill full of named cuts and proper angles. A taster receives the first morsel. Another tests the sauce. Wine is poured into a small cup before reaching the Queen's vessel. Everyone waits through the familiar pause. The taster swallows, remains upright, and gives the slightest signal. Only then does Elizabeth eat. She accepts a small portion from a trencher. Sauces are rich with spice, not merely to hide spoiled meat as later tales claim, but because pepper, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and nutmeg display wealth and trade. A dish may taste sweet, sharp, and savory at once. Sugar appears with meat, fruit appears in sauces. Medieval cooks feel no obligation to respect the neat boundaries of future menus. Elizabeth eats slowly. Her appetite remains modest and every choice is watched. She tastes capon, a little bread, perhaps a spoonful of stewed fruit. She refuses a heavier pie with a movement so slight that the server retreats before most guests notice. The lower tables receive their own dishes. Gentlemen talk softly. A visiting noble praises the sauce too warmly, causing several people to suspect he wants something. Another man eats in silence and attracts even more suspicion. Between courses, servants replace trenchers, wipe the table, and carry away bones. Used plates vanish quickly. Silver is counted each time it moves. A missing spoon can become theft scandal or a week of questions for exhausted servants. The officer responsible watches every piece with the devotion of a monk guarding a doubtful relic. A covered salt cellar stands near Elizabeth. Salt is precious, useful for preserving winter stores and important enough to mark social rank. Guests seated nearer the Queen occupy positions of honour. Those farther away understand the geography perfectly, even while pretending to care only about smoked fish. Music sounds from a gallery above. Lutes and viols soften the scrape of benches and the murmur of conversation. The melody flows through candle smoke. Elizabeth listens while lifting her cup. The vessel gleams with jewels believed by some to warn against poison. Even now it is hard to tell whether anyone trusts such stones completely, but few courtiers object to precautions when danger may arrive disguised as hospitality. A final dish of wafers, preserved pears, and spiced wine is offered. Elizabeth takes little. Her fingers are washed again. The towel is changed. Remaining food is covered and removed through the guarded chain by which it entered. You watch the Queen rise while servants bow around a table still heavy with abundance. She has been the centre of the meal, yet touched only fragments of it. Most dishes exist to display order, wealth, vigilance, and access. The feast feeds the household, but the ritual feeds monarchy. Outside, rainwater drips from the eaves, kitchen bells answer one another below, and the palace settles briefly into the warm, satisfied hush that follows food before duty begins moving again through every corridor. As the doors open, warm air rolls into the colder gallery. Behind you, trenchers are gathered for those waiting below stairs, and the dog finally succeeds in stealing a crust. The stolen crust disappears beneath the dog's paws as Elizabeth leaves the dining chamber, and the hush after the meal gives way to a lighter rhythm. Music still drifts from the gallery above, but now it follows the Queen. You move with a household into a chamber where the windows face the river. Rain beads upon the glass. The floor has been cleared of stools, loose rushes, and anything capable of catching a hem. At one end, musicians wait with lutes, viols, a drum, and a virginal. Elizabeth pauses near the hearth while her ladies adjust the fall of her sleeves. Dancing after a meal is not merely amusement, it is exercise, display, discipline, and courtly conversation performed without speaking. Every partner receives a portion of favour measured in music. The first tune begins. A gentleman bows and offers his hand. Elizabeth accepts. You watch her move with practiced precision, lifting the heavy skirt just enough to free her feet. The farthingale sways in controlled arcs. Pearls tremble in the wig but do not fall. Her steps are smaller than those of younger dancers, yet no one mistakes restraint for weakness. She turns, advances, retreats, and pauses exactly where the pattern requires. A galliard would demand leaps and kicks, and in earlier years she is said to have performed it with remarkable energy. Some swear that she continued dancing long after cautious physicians advised moderation. No one can quite agree how vigorous her later routines truly were, But the stories endure because motion suits the image she wishes to preserve, alert, youthful, untiring, and always in command. Today the dance is measured. The musicians hold a steady tempo. A courtier attempts elegance and nearly tangles himself in his own sword belt. He recovers before striking the floor, then bows as though the stumble were an innovative French figure. The Queen's mouth curves slightly. Mercy, in this case, takes the form of pretending not to notice. When the tune ends, she does not sit. Instead, she walks the length of the chamber accompanied by 2 ladies and a gentleman of the privy chamber. You follow farther back, hearing slippers whisper across the boards. Walking indoors is safer than crossing muddy courtyards, and the galleries provide shelter from rain, wind, and the enthusiastic opinions of puddles. The palace itself becomes a track. Elizabeth passes portraits, windows, carved chests, and guarded doors. At each turn, an usher opens the path. Courtiers stationed along the walls bow as she approaches, transforming a simple walk into a moving audience. She may ask a question, receive a gift, or exchange a few words without ever stopping long enough for the air to grow cold around her. Physicians value moderate movement because it stirs the body, aids digestion, and prevents the humours from settling badly. They recommend walking after meals, though they differ over pace, duration, and whether the wind is too moist. Tudor medicine can turn crossing a room into a committee decision. At a window overlooking the privy garden, Elizabeth pauses. The rain has weakened to mist. Gravel paths shine below, bordered by clipped herbs, bare fruit trees, and rosemary bushes protected with straw. In fair weather she may walk there, breathing air thought cleaner than the crowded chambers. Today the stones are slick, so the garden must be admired from safety. A lady opens a pomander and refreshes the Queen's gloves with scent. Musk, cloves, and rose rise warmly. Another servant offers a small cordial of spiced wine and herbs. Cordials are believed to strengthen the heart and restore spirits after exertion. The Queen takes only a sip. A recipe may contain cinnamon, borage, ambergris, or gold leaf, though the gold contributes more prestige than nourishment. The procession continues toward a smaller music room. Here the ceiling is lower and the fire kinder. The virginal is carried in and placed near the window. Elizabeth sometimes plays keyboard instruments herself, and she understands music well enough to judge both skill and flattery. A young musician sits before her, hands trembling above the keys. He begins. The melody is delicate, each note bright against the crackle of the hearth. Elizabeth listens with her head inclined. The court grows still. Even the dog lies down, whether from appreciation or exhaustion after its criminal-bred enterprise. Music is thought capable of influencing the body's balance. A cheerful tune may lift melancholy. A gentle one may calm an agitated heart. Some physicians warn that harsh sounds disturb the spirits within the body. Others prescribe singing for the lungs. Even now it is hard to tell whether the court values music more as medicine, devotion, education, or an elegant excuse to keep talented people nearby. When the piece ends, Elizabeth praises the musician and asks for another. His fear dissolves enough for him to breathe. The second tune is livelier. One lady taps a finger against her sleeve. A gentleman marks the rhythm with his heel until a glance from the usher reminds him that flaws like politics should not be struck without permission. Later, Elizabeth rises again and walks toward the far gallery. The half-burned candle from dawn has finally been replaced, though its brass holder remains. Outside monastery bells mark the afternoon. The sound crosses wet roofs, market lanes, and the grey river before entering through the shutters. You feel the day turning. The Queen has prayed, eaten, governed, and displayed herself, yet still the ritual of movement continues. Each measured step guards digestion. Each dance preserves grace. Each appearance reassures the court that age, illness, and fatigue remain outside the painted face and jewelled gown. At the gallery's end, Elizabeth stops beside a tapestry of spring flowers. Her breathing is calm. A lady offers her chair, but she refuses it for another moment, standing beneath the woven blossoms while rainlight touches the pearls at her throat. Then she turns back toward the waiting musicians, and the household turns with her. The household turns with Elizabeth, but the next chamber does not belong to music. A physician waits beyond a carved door, surrounded by boxes, glass vials, folded papers, and the faint, medicinal smell of vinegar-dried herbs and something bitter simmering over charcoal. You enter after the Queen and stand near the wall while her ladies settle the train of her gown. The room is smaller than the council chamber, yet it contains nearly as much argument. One physician believes the damp air threatens her lungs. Another warns that too much heat may weaken the spirits. A third has written an opinion long enough to endanger everyone through boredom alone. Elizabeth sits beside the hearth. Her painted face remains composed, though the day has already carried her through prayer breakfast petitions, council papers, a formal meal music, and several measured walks. Fatigue is not announced. At court, weariness must wait outside with muddy boots. A silver cup is presented. Inside lies a cordial warmed with wine, cinnamon, cloves, and perhaps borage herb praised for strengthening the heart and lifting melancholy. Some recipes add ambergris musk or tiny leaves of gold. The gold dissolves poorly, but it flatters the patient magnificently. The physician smells the cup before offering it. A servant tastes it. Elizabeth drinks only a little. Her pulse is then examined. The physician places 2 fingers against her wrist and closes his eyes as though listening to a distant horse. Pulse reading is considered a serious art. Its speed, strength, and rhythm may reveal heat, cold fear, digestion, or hidden imbalance. No one can quite agree how much the physician truly learns, but everyone watches his expression. A glass flask stands upon the table for examining urine, one of the most familiar tools of learned medicine. Color clarity, sediment, and even smell may be interpreted according to charts. Physicians sometimes diagnose patients they have never seen by studying such a flask brought from miles away. This encourages impressive confidence and occasional confusion, especially when servants mix up the bottles. Today the vessel is not required. The Queen asks instead about a stiffness in one hand. A salve of beeswax, rosemary, and warmed oil is recommended. Another physician suggests gentle rubbing with cloth. A third mentions bloodletting, causing the ladies nearest the Queen to become very still. Bloodletting may be performed with a small blade or with leeches according to the complaint and the position of the planets. The body is believed to depend upon balanced humours, blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much of one may bring fever, sadness, anger, heaviness, or nearly any symptom requiring professional attention. Elizabeth does not offer her arm. Instead, the herbal salve is brought forward. A lady warms a small amount between her fingers and rubs it carefully over the Queen's knuckles. The scent of rosemary rises again, recalling the first fire before dawn. The motion is slow and soothing, whether or not the herb performs all the wonders promised for it. On a shelf rests a pomander larger than the one at Elizabeth's waist. Its pierced silver shell holds cloves resin, dried rose, and fragrant paste. Sweet smells are thought to guard against corrupted air. During outbreaks of sickness, people carry herbs in pockets, burn juniper, or press vinegar-soaked sponges near the nose. Some swear that disease flees from strong perfume. Disease, unfortunately, is not known for politeness. A folded almanac lies beside the medicine chest. Its pages mark favorable and unfavorable days for bleeding, purging travel bathing, and taking certain remedies. Astrological medicine links parts of the body with signs of the zodiac. The physician consults the moon before recommending any stronger treatment. Even now, it is hard to tell whether Elizabeth follows such timing from belief caution or because physicians become nervous when ignored. She understands that the heavens are read by scholars across Europe, but she also understands that stars do not bear responsibility when a potion fails. A tiny charm is removed from a locked box. It is wrapped in silk and attached to a fine chain. Inside may be a written prayer, a piece of coral or a stone believed to resist poison. Protestant teaching looks uneasily upon charms, yet protective objects remain common. Old fears survive beneath new doctrines, especially when illness enters a palace without bowing. The senior lady examines the chain before fastening it beneath the Queen's bodice hidden from public sight. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether Elizabeth truly wears such objects each day. Yet rings, amulets, bezoar stones, unicorn horn, and blessed substances circulate through royal households because danger feels easier to bear when it can be enclosed in silver. A messenger arrives from the kitchens carrying a sealed jar of conserve made from rose petals and sugar. It is recommended for the heart, breath, and digestion. Elizabeth tastes a little from a spoon. The mixture is sweet enough to qualify as medicine, mainly because a physician is standing nearby. Near the window, bundles of dried sage, rue, lavender, and wormwood hang from a beam. Rue is praised against poison. Sage is said to preserve life. Wormwood aids digestion but punishes the tongue. Lavender calms the head and freshens linen. Each herb has several uses, several warnings, and at least one story involving a monk who lived to an improbable age. The physician advises rest before the evening audiences. Elizabeth listens, then asks how long. He suggests half an hour. She grants herself 10 minutes. A cushioned chair is moved closer to the fire. Her ladies loosen, nothing visible, but one adjusts a hidden fastening at the waist. The dog curls beside the hem, rain taps softly at the panes, and the medicinal room grows quiet. For a brief interval, the Queen closes her eyes. Around her, cordials, cool herbs hang motionless planets, continue their indifferent courses, and physicians guard their mysteries, while hoping that warmth, time, and sleep may accomplish what their remedies cannot alone. The 10 minutes of rest end when the physician's hourglass has scarcely emptied a third of its sand. Elizabeth opens her eyes and the room awakens with her. The cordial is covered, the herb salve is returned to its box. A lady smooths the velvet at the Queen's waist, checks the pearls above her brow, and restores the public stillness of her face. You follow as the doors open toward the audience chamber. Afternoon light has weakened, so servants brighten the room with beeswax candles. Their flames gleam upon silver vessels, polished armor, and the jeweled gifts arranged upon a side table. Each object waits to become part compliment, part negotiation, and part trap. The first visitors are English courtiers. They stand, according to rank, dressed in satin, wool, fur, and ambition. One gentleman wears a new doublet embroidered with suns, hoping the image will suggest that he flourishes beneath Elizabeth's light. Another has chosen black velvet to appear sober and trustworthy. No one can quite agree whether clothing reveals character, but everyone agrees it should reveal expense. An usher calls the first name. The man advances, bows, kneels, and remains there until the Queen permits him to rise. He offers a small book bound in leather. Its pages contain verses praising Elizabeth as Moonstar Rose Phoenix and several other things incapable of signing tax warrants. She receives the book graciously. Her smile is enough to reward him, but not warm enough to promise office. Courtly praise works best when both sides understand that it is exaggerated and continue anyway. A lady approaches next with embroidered gloves, scented with amber and rose. Gloves are practical gifts, fashionable gifts, and intimate gifts because scent lingers close to the skin. Elizabeth lifts them toward her face, praises the workmanship, and asks after the lady's mother. The question is gentle, yet it reminds everyone that the Queen remembers families, loyalties, and absences. Then an ambassador is admitted. His cloak is damp from the river stairs, though servants have brushed away the worst of the rain. He bows low and presents a jewel enclosed in crystal. It takes the form of a knot joining two golden branches. The meaning is clear before he explains it. Marriage has returned to the room. Elizabeth listens while the ambassador speaks of friendship between realms, shared enemies, prosperous trade, and the virtues of a prince who is, according to the speech, healthy, wise, handsome, brave, devout, moderate, learned, and presumably capable of walking upon water when diplomatic weather requires it. The Queen asks about the prince's horses. The ambassador pauses, then answers. She asks whether he dances. Another pause. A few courtiers lower their eyes to hide smiles. Elizabeth turns the marriage proposal into conversation, and conversation into delay. She neither accepts nor refuses. The possibility remains alive, useful, and safely beyond reach. Her unmarried state is not merely personal. It is a political instrument and a mystery. Suitors may be encouraged without being chosen. Foreign powers may hope, wait, and offer concessions. English factions may compete to influence a match that never occurs. The Queen keeps every door visible while leaving each one locked. Some swear that she privately longs for marriage. Others insist she values freedom too deeply. Even now it is hard to tell whether affection, fear, policy, memory, or all of them shape her choices. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, and perhaps Elizabeth prefers it that way. The language surrounding her has grown into ritual. She is called the Virgin Queen, married not to a man, but to England. Pearls upon her gowns reinforce purity. Moons, pelicans, phoenixes, and ermines appear in portraits and gifts. Each emblem says something different: chastity, sacrifice, rebirth, royal cleanliness, endurance. Yet the court is not foolish enough to mistake symbols for simplicity. Men praise her beauty while studying her favor. Women offer devotion while protecting family interests. Ambassadors flatter her youth even as they report privately upon her health. Compliments float through the chamber like incense, pleasant, useful, and difficult to breathe for too long. A young nobleman kneels to present a miniature portrait of himself. He claims it is only a token of service. The dog wandering beneath the side table sniffs the case and sneezes. The court remains solemn. Elizabeth examines the portrait, then remarks that the painter has been charitable. Laughter rises, controlled by rank. The young man laughs too, because survival at court sometimes means enjoying your own defeat. Near the wall, a maid has tucked a piece of dried vervain into her sleeve. Vervain is believed by some to attract favor and protect against enchantment. She touches it before carrying the next gift forward. Whether the herb helps is uncertain, but she does not stumble, which is evidence enough for superstition. The audience continues. Petitions are received. A widow seeks relief from a disputed estate. A captain offers a captured standard. A poet presents lines comparing Elizabeth's wisdom to Minerva's. A merchant requests protection for ships traveling through dangerous waters. Each person bows, speaks, watches the Queen's eyes, and retreats carrying more interpretation than certainty. Elizabeth gives little away. A raised eyebrow may warn, a softened voice may reward, a hand, extended for kissing, may restore a frightened courtier's hope. Her body has become a language, and everyone in the chamber believes they can read it, though their translations rarely agree. As candles burn lower, the ambassador withdraws with no answer to his prince's proposal. He has received kind words, a smile, and questions about horses. This is enough to report progress and not enough to claim success. Elizabeth remains beneath the cloth of estate, surrounded by pearls, gifts, kneeling figures, and polished legends. She appears untouched by uncertainty, because uncertainty itself has become one of her ceremonies. Outside evening gathers above the Thames. Inside, a courtier bends his knee, offers praise, and waits to discover whether the Queen's smile is a promise, a warning, or simply a smile. The final courtier retreats with his uncertainty, and the audience chamber loosens around Elizabeth as dusk settles against the windows. Ambassadors withdraw with careful faces, while servants begin the slow work of returning the palace from spectacle to shadow. You follow the Queen through the Privy Gallery. Her measured steps reveal the day's weight. The farthingale brushes the rushes. Pearls click softly against one another. Behind her, ladies carry gifts, petitions, and sealed papers gathered during the audience. Nothing is left unattended, because a forgotten ribbon may become gossip, and a forgotten letter may become treason. The private chamber receives her with warmer air and fewer witnesses. The door closes. Guards remain outside. Within, only trusted attendants approach. First, the jewels are counted. A senior lady opens a velvet-lined chest and places it upon a table beneath two candles. Rings are removed one by one, named quietly, and entered into a written inventory. A ruby cluster, a pearl rope, a diamond brooch, the jewelled knot from the ambassador. Each object is examined for loose stones, damaged settings, or hidden substances. Elizabeth extends her hands while rings slide from her fingers. The skin beneath them appears pale and slightly marked. A servant wipes each piece with soft linen before placing it into its proper compartment. No gem is allowed to disappear beneath rushes or into the hopeful pocket of a sleepy page. The pearls are unpinned from the wig. One attendant counts aloud while another checks the number against the morning record. Pearls have long been associated with purity, but at this hour they behave like troublesome peas rolling toward table edges whenever given freedom. A maid catches one beneath her palm and looks as relieved as though she has prevented a rebellion. The broad ruff comes next. Pins are removed carefully, laid upon a small dish, and counted. When the starched linen lifts away, Elizabeth's neck is freed from its white fortress. She rolls one shoulder slightly. No one comments. Royal discomfort is acknowledged by solving it, not naming it. The jewelled gown is unfastened in stages. Sleeves are untied, hooks are released. The stomacher is lifted away and laid flat. Several women support the weight of velvet and cloth of gold, while the Queen steps free. The train is brushed, inspected for damp, and folded according to its seams. Cedar chests stand open, lined with clean cloth, and scented herbs to discourage moths. Some swear that placing bay leaves among expensive garments protects them from lightning, as well as insects. No one can quite agree why lightning would search a wardrobe, but a few leaves lie beneath the velvet anyway. In a palace, caution often survives questions more easily than answers. The farthingale is lifted away, followed by the stiffened bodice. Laces loosen slowly. Elizabeth breathes more deeply as the pressure around her ribs eases. A soft fur-lined wrapper replaces the heavy gown, and warm slippers replace embroidered shoes. Authority remains in her posture, but its architecture has been set aside upon tables and chairs. The wig is removed at last. Attendants lift it carefully to preserve the curls, then settle it upon its wooden stand. Elizabeth's natural hair, flattened beneath pins, is combed gently. Loose strands are gathered. The scalp is rubbed with a little scented oil, perhaps rosemary or rose, and covered with a simple linen cap. Then the painted face begins to disappear. A basin of warmed water is brought along with linen cloths, oil and mild cleansing preparations. The white cosmetic does not surrender easily. An attendant applies oil to loosen it, wiping from forehead to cheek in patient strokes. Pale residue marks the cloth. Fresh pieces replace it. Red pigment fades from the lips, powder vanishes from the temples. The mirror remains nearby, but Elizabeth does not look into it often. The face returning beneath the paint is older, softer, and more tired. Marks once hidden reappear. Fine lines settle around the eyes. Yet the room does not treat this face as lesser. It is simply more private, known only to those whose loyalty has granted them entry after the performance ends. A salve of beeswax and herbs soothes dry skin. Another cloth cleans the queen's hands. The pomander is detached from her girdle and opened, so its fragrant contents may be refreshed. A small amulet hidden beneath the bodice is removed, inspected, and returned to a locked box. Even now it is hard to tell whether it is treasured as protection habit or memory. While Elizabeth is undressed, secretaries secure the day's papers in an adjoining room. Letters are sorted by urgency. Cipher sheets are separated from ordinary dispatches. Wax is warmed for new seals. Iron keys turn in oak cabinets, and one clerk checks each lock twice. A careless document may travel farther than any messenger. The petition from the woodland villagers is placed beside the report about the northern powder stores. The marriage proposal receives its own packet. The miniature portrait offered by the unfortunate young nobleman is wrapped and labelled, perhaps to spare future generations from the painter's charity. The little dog circles the discarded rushes, searching for another crust, and finding only a fallen thread of gold. A maid removes it before the animal can swallow royal embroidery and create a new household office devoted to waiting. Outside, evening bells sound across the river. Kitchen servants carry trenchers below stairs. Guards light torches in the courtyards. The suspicious monk passes beneath a window with his copied pages, while rainwater drips from the eaves in a patient rhythm. Inside, the last jewel disappears into velvet. The last stained cloth enters its basket. Chests close, inventories are signed, and keys return to the senior lady's waist. Elizabeth sits beside the hearth in plain linen and fur, her face unpainted, her hands resting quietly. The magnificent figure, seen by ambassadors, has been dismantled piece by piece, yet the Queen remains listening as another lock turns between her and the palace. The final lock settles with a heavy click, and the sound travels through the chamber more deeply than the distant bells. Elizabeth remains beside the hearth while evening gathers around Whitehall, softening the painted ceilings, darkening the river, and turning every window into a square of black glass. You stand near the outer wall as the household begins its last ritual of the day. A servant draws the bed curtains back. Another shakes the linen, checks the cords beneath the mattress, and smooths the blankets with both hands. The sheets have been warmed with a long-handled pan, filled with hot coals passed carefully between the layers so that no spark touches the cloth. A wool blanket lies over the linen, followed by an embroidered coverlet. Fur is placed near the foot of the bed for the coldest hours. The chamber belongs to a queen, but winter enters through stone without respecting titles. A lady inspects the pillows. One is filled with feathers, another with softer down, and a smaller cushion contains lavender and dried hops. Some swear that hops encourage sleep and quiet troublesome dreams. Others place betony beneath a pillow to guard against nightmares, spirits, and headaches. No one can quite agree whether the herbs help, though the scent makes belief easier. Elizabeth receives a light supper beside the fire. It is little more than bread, warm broth, and a small cup of spiced drink. The food is tasted, the vessel checked, and the napkin presented, with the same care used at breakfast. Even at night, caution does not remove its shoes. She eats slowly while the secretary reads final reports. A gate has closed late, a messenger has arrived from the coast, and an ill servant has been moved away. The northern packet delayed by the broken cartwheel is now secured. Each detail belongs to the web protecting her. When the reading ends, the papers are folded and sealed. The secretary bows and withdraws. Elizabeth washes her hands in warmed rose water. Her fingers, freed from rings, look almost ordinary in the candlelight. The chaplain enters for evening prayer. He carries no procession, only a Bible and a steady voice. Elizabeth kneels upon the herb-filled cushion, wrapped in fur-lined wool. The prayer asks protection for the realm, wisdom for those who govern, health for the household, and mercy through the coming night. Beyond the chamber, guards change their watch. Iron keys pass from one hand to another. Names are repeated. Doors are tested. A torch is replaced near the stair. No guard may leave until the next man understands every message, every visitor, and every unusual sound. Some servants believe keys beneath a pillow prevent bad dreams, while others hang iron near the bed to discourage spirits. Here the iron is practical, built into locks thick enough to deter both ghosts and ambitious courtiers. The little dog circles the chamber twice before settling upon a cushion near the bed. It watches each departing servant with sharp suspicion. Perhaps it remembers the monk, perhaps it distrusts everyone equally, which at court may be the safest policy. Elizabeth rises from prayer. The chaplain closes the Bible, and the Queen crosses toward the bed more slowly. The day has stripped away music, petitions, jewels, and ceremony. Only the tired woman remains beneath wool and linen. Before she lies down, the curtains are inspected once more. A maid checks behind them beneath the bed and inside a nearby cupboard. This is partly security and partly ancient habit. Stories speak of assassins hiding in chambers, though most cupboards contain only folded cloth and disappointment. The Queen settles against the pillows. Her ladies arrange the blankets around her shoulders. A cup of water stands covered nearby. A bell cord hangs within reach, leading to attendants in the outer chamber. One beeswax candle remains near the bed, giving a clean flame and faint, honeyed scent. The half-burned taper, remembered from dawn, is gone, yet its soft glow seems to linger in every careful movement. The bed curtains close. Outside them, two ladies remain awake for the first watch. They speak only in whispers. One mends a torn ribbon. The other warms her hands over the brazier and listens to the wind moving along the river. No one can quite agree whether Elizabeth sleeps easily. Some swear that footsteps wake her, others describe long nights filled with reports, memories, and names no longer spoken. The palace settles around her while the chamber listens in perfect silence, and now the pace of the night grows slower. The guards beyond the oak doors stand quietly, their shadows long upon the stone. The river mist presses against the windows, and the last barge glides past without song. Far across London, market fires fade beneath ash. Bakers prepare dough for morning. Horses shift in damp stables. A monastery bell sounds once, then leaves the darkness untouched. The cold no longer feels sharp from here. It becomes only a distant presence beyond thick walls, while the chamber gathers warmth around you, holding the silence, gently asking nothing and allowing the long day to loosen quietly at last. You remain near the hearth, while the coals sink inward, red and gentle beneath their grey covering. The dog breathes softly from its cushion. The ladies lower their needles. The room grows still enough for you to hear the faint settling of timber, the whisper of wool blankets and rain sliding from the palace roof. Behind the curtains the Queen rests at last, no longer framed by pearls, no longer watched by ambassadors, no longer required to turn every smile into policy. The doors are locked, the papers are sealed, the jewels sleep inside velvet, the herbs beneath the pillow release their quiet scent. You may let the long palace corridors recede now. Let the torchlight grow dimmer. Let the bells drift farther away beyond the river, beyond the walls, beyond the cold fields where frost gathers over empty roads. Nothing more is required of you tonight. The watch is kept, the fire is safe, the doors are strong. You can rest beneath warm blankets while the old world fades into darkness, one candle at a time, until only the soft breathing of the room remains steady and calm, carrying you gently towards sleep.